Kevin, as you've talked to people that Arkansas is looking at, commits for the future. Exactly what does this run to the Elite Eight that the Hogs had this year mean for those guys who are looking to come to Arkansas?
Well, it only helps. And I mean, it's perfect marketing and branding when you can sell recruits, especially in the transfer portal where Musselman had success at Nevada. And then in his first two seasons at Arkansas, he effectively remade the roster. Most of those were with transfers. And now you could say, well, the proof's in the pudding. Not only can I help you develop for the next level, but I can coach a team to an Elite Eight, which gets you more exposure and helps you build on your resume as you try to look, forward to professional basketball. So this has really helped recruiting, and you see it already. I mean, Arkansas, while they were in the Indianapolis bubble for the NCAA tournament for 3 weeks, they were also recruiting heavily. If you look at DC Toney, the 6'6" wing transfer from Pitt, he was a guy that Arkansas really started prioritizing in early March. So not only were they getting their team ready to win in advance of the NCAA tournament, they're also putting in a lot of effort and time in recruiting, contacting between 30 and 40 players in the portal, but getting DC Toney out of the gates was a strong get. I mean, here's a guy that had a lot of high major schools after him. When you look at the loss of a big guard like Jalen Tate, 6'6" guard, combo guard on the perimeter, the likelihood that Moses Moody, another 6'6" guard, the freshman, SEC freshman year, moving on to the NBA draft. Musselman's already starting to rearm that backcourt with big guards when you look at Toney. And there are several more names in the portal that Arkansas's in the running for, in the finals mix for. And we're going to see over the next few days and weeks some of that play out. But to go back to your question, anytime you have success like Arkansas did in the postseason, now it's not just about what you're telling recruits you can do for them. You've now shown them a path on every level. I mean, it wasn't just that Arkansas made it to the Elite Eight. Guys like Justin Smith and Jalen Tate were a big part of that. Both of them played extremely well in the tournament when they're getting more and more national exposure. So again, when you look at recruiting, Musselman's done a good job in his first two seasons, first two recruiting classes effectively. And I think now we're going to see some of that momentum pay off in this portal in the spring in his third recruiting cycle.
One thing I know that you see and is really important to Razorback fans and has been a topic of conversation in the past is keeping the talent in Arkansas at Arkansas. You don't want to see guys going to Kentucky, going to Florida, going to Vanderbilt out of the state of Arkansas anymore. And I think Musselman and his staff doing a really good job of keeping the in-state talent in state.
They have. And you look at that freshman class last season that really emerged. Moses Moody was a day one starter from the 2020 class. We talked about how good he was this year, arguably could have been, I think, SEC Player of the Year, Arkansas's leading scorer. But when you looked at guys that it took a little bit of time, Arkansas got out of the gate slow in SEC play, but we saw freshmen like Devontae Davis out of Jacksonville, Jalen Williams out of Fort Smith Northside. I think something similar would have happened with KK Robinson out of Central Arkansas had he been healthy and played the second half of the season. But all of those guys emerged in the top 5-6 part of the rotation to help this Arkansas team get better and be as good as it could be. So that can only help in recruiting in-state guys moving forward when you see that there was not only roles for these guys, but over the course of a very successful season, the in-state talent had as big a hand in writing those chapters of how good this team got to be. A top 10 ranked season, an Elite Eight, a number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. So if if you grew up in this state and you're keeping an eye on those things, not only do you see an opportunity to help yourself get to the next level, but be a part of something big that gets you more exposure too as a player.
Yeah, the future is bright for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And of course, it was fun to watch this run to the Elite Eight. We're going to have more from the show coming up after the break. Okay, Kevin, now as we look to just what this season meant as a whole, looking back and kind of getting to reflect a little bit from start to finish, what do you think you're going to remember the most from this season?
It's interesting. That's a great question because there's so many things. I mean, basically rewriting history or joining some great teams from the past, but a lot was expected of those teams going into some of those seasons. This was a little bit different this year. Year 2 of Eric Musselman, yes, he had a top 5 recruiting class from the high school level, a top 10 class with grad transfers, but you only had one player really returning with experience, and that was Desi Seals. So when I look back at this season, I think the word that stands out is resiliency. This team led the nation in comeback wins from being down by double digit margins and turning that around into victory. They did it 10 times this season. And what you saw when Arkansas got slapped around early in conference play, I hate to phrase it that way, but that's what happened when you looked at home losses against Missouri, on the road, LSU, Alabama. They turned things around, and part of that was getting the rotations worked out right. I think there became Musselman struck a really good balance with playing freshmen and some of the transfers. But I think another big part of it was when we saw Musselman in his in-game adjustments, his game lead-up preparation during between games. Those things really stood out to me as what helped serve this Arkansas team. And so, at the end of the day, you started off with a rough patch in SEC play, but you turned that around, and you came back from so many games when you trailed by a lot where you could have maybe mailed it in, but Arkansas didn't do that. It wasn't in their DNA. And then you had a run to the Elite Eight. So I'm going to use one word, resiliency, after using all those other words to set that up again. Resiliency is what I'll remember this team for in a great season.
And lastly, Kevin, how fun was it for you to watch this team? And you talk about the resiliency, but just from the way that they were able to turn things around, go on the run that they did, just from a fan's perspective. And I know you've been a fan for a really long time. How fun was this to watch?
It was a lot of fun. I rank this as one of the top 10 seasons in program history. I go all the way
Yeah.
back to the triplet days, got to watch those guys play. And I remember a lot of those moments vividly because I've always liked basketball. But so I've been through the best of times. And these last 25 years, there's been some rough patches, but Arkansas basketball got back to being nationally relevant. So that's always fun whether you're a fan or you're covering the team as a journalist. And then you look at the pieces that Eric Musselman has coming back, and we know there's guys moving on, but guys like Devontae Davis, look at the energy he brings to the floor, his personality. He's got swagger, but he impacts games on both ends of the floor that affect winning. Jalen Williams, who I expect big things from, both of these guys are all league type of players, even as sophomores coming into next year. I think KK Robinson can recover and do the same thing. JD Notae, a guy that really showed his volume scoring and ability to strike fast and often. And now you want to see him get more consistent. But the core is there for Eric Musselman to build on it in year three. Not only get this team back to the NCAA tournament, but be a team that potentially is ranked for most of the season. And when you get to the March Madness, maybe a team that folks around the country are looking at and saying, "Hey, this is a team that can not only get another run to the second weekend, but maybe beyond that this time."